I'll be joining another time. Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, that's great. Jen and Myers can't hear as well too. Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Alistair Tulloch. I am EECD's Power School Pedagogy Lead, and I work with your pedagogy specialists in your district, also your SIS people in the district, and I'd like to introduce to you Lindsay McDonald, if you want to say hi, Lindsay.
Good morning. I am working at EECD and I work with all things Power School with Alistair's team on pedagogy and the SIS team. And I may even be working with some of you sometimes. So, if you get a message from me, you'll know to accept it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Another thing we're going to be working on, folks, this year too is really trying to get people to use the help desk to log your requests. We need to, our supervisors need to know that we're busy helping you out. So if you could submit help desk requests, that would help us to track the work that we are doing on your behalf. So just a little public announcement right there. So on the screen in front of you, you will see the brand new attendance data standard. So I just want to give everyone just a little bit of background. Last year, the 10-year ed plan came out, and there were a number of measures that are some were already in place, and there are others that are being developed and refined. One of the big ones for this year is going to be we're creating a new baseline set of numbers, if you will, around attendance, and specifically how much time students may be missing from classes for whatever reasons. Through this past year, with your data and accountability supervisors, policy and planning, your SIS and your PED leads, we all sat down and we took a hard look at what's attendance things are like in Power School and in schools, and spoke with AAs, and we looked at tightening up procedures and introducing new procedures that would create a reliable and valid attendance data. So while the 10-year plan is saying that we're now going to create a new baseline, attendance is not just for a provincial concern. We're also doing this as well too, so that the data within your school and within your district can also help you attend to student needs and to see what may go into a school improvement plan or a district improvement plan around attendance. So there's just a number of codes that I'd like to bring to your attention. So this data standard is a great document. Hats off to Monica LeBlanc for getting this all pounded out, and for the people that put their time into it as well too. There's a couple of new codes, and others that have been retired. So the one of the main ones, a new one, is called school programming, and that now covers things like guidance. It also covers co-op. It covers if a student is doing something that has to do with school, but they're not necessarily sitting in the classroom. So let's use co-op for example. I mention this just because I know this is mostly for our K-8 world, but you may be going to another school at some other time. If the student is doing something for school, but they're not physically in the classroom, then we would be using school programming. And we got rid of the guidance code because some kids just don't want to know that we don't want to be telling everybody that they've had guidance appointments. School programming is appropriate to say we know where the child is, but they're not sitting in the classroom. Well, I'll put this in there now. If you can't, if you have a question, just please type it in the window. That's why Lindsay's here. She will interrupt me with a question that's relevant at the moment, or if you think your question can wait to the end, we'll have a little Q&A at the end. School activity. This is another one that we're going to be talking about today that we wish people to use a little bit more. School sports team. For those of you that may be in a K-12 building or 6-12 building, there's no MBIAA code anymore. We're just using the school team. Medical appointment is the same, school non-related, we still have that. The wording around other informed absence it's no longer other excused absence. excused means that we've made a judgment call on whether the child is there or not, and what we're now saying is that we now have information that the child is absent. Excuse me while I go look for it again. Attendance not required. We're going to be looking at that one a little bit more in depth today. We're asking schools to use this one a little more often. Just to give you functionality background on PowerSchool, if attendance is not submitted by a teacher, then the default for that child is present, and that's not always true. So if let's see an example. Let's say a student is on a new behavior plan, and we've said that the child's only to come every other day, or maybe the mornings only, and they're not to attend the afternoon. What we're saying now is we want to accurately capture that a child needs to be in school, or we have said it's okay that they're not in school, which would be attendance not required. Typical for, say, the exam period, maybe they don't have to come on Tuesday, so then their attendance should be entered as in attendance not required. Are there any questions about the data standard? Lindsay, would you like to add anything in there as well too?
No, I think you've covered everything.
Okay.
And so far, no questions related to attendance.
All right. Okay, so we are in our K-8 world right here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to first of all review some of the standard procedures you're doing already, and we just want to revisit them just to make sure that we have everybody doing the same thing starting up at the beginning of the year, so we have everybody basically paddling the boat in the right direction. So the first thing I want to just talk about is the school calendar. So under Setup Schools, taking a look at the school calendar, we want to make sure that everybody has their screens set up like this. So depending on your school, your drop down may be an A, B, C, D, E, whatever it is for your school. Some schools only have 2 days, like a 2-day rotating schedule. Some schools have an A day only. So we want to make sure that you've got all your correct, because this populates the schedule for the students. Some schools have more than one bell schedule, so you have to make sure you always have a bell schedule attached. When school is in session, we need this checked off. I'd like to talk about your membership value. When school is only open for a half a day, because sometimes kids are going home at lunchtime and we know that, or there's a storm and the kids are going home at lunchtime, we never change the attendance value to this membership value to be anything but 1. It's either 0 because school's closed, or it's 1 because school is open, and it's no indication on how long school is open. It's just that the doors are open. This value right here is multiplied by the value of the code. So if a student is AM absent for medical, for example, then that's a 0.5 value. That 0.5 value is multiplied by the 1 to give a 0.5 absence, and that's how the report card publishes the student's attendance. In New Brunswick, we have all tracks used and set to. We don't use tracks in terms of a track A, B, C, D. So therefore, we need to have all the tracks turned on and left on. You don't even have to unclick these if school is not in session. So you don't have to, if this day's canceled, you don't have to spend the time clicking all of these one at a time. You can just leave them on. These last two fields, the type and the note, neither of these impact on the report card or any of the attendance reports. They are really just identifiers for you so that you can say, let's say the school is closed because the heating stops working. So then you can actually put some notes in there to yourself and say that school was not in session. So this would be a 0. So that would be a not in session day. And you have a little note here to yourself on why it was actually closed. Any questions about the calendar? It's always good practice to make sure that you look at the calendar the beginning of the month, the end of the month, just to make sure that it's accurate. Also around report card time, the calendar needs to be updated at least 24 hours before the teachers start printing their report cards. There is an overnight process that goes on with PowerSchool that pushes the information that you do today into other tables, which will then impact on things like the report card and things like that before.
Alistair, we have a
Yes, a
question.
question,
Do you
yeah.
need to click off Monday?
You mean as in like clear it out like this? We've been asking everybody to clear out the entire row going all the way across. Because we just want to make sure that we have a standard procedure that's going. So if this is not in session, so this is, sorry, you leave those. This is what it could look like. Could be weather. And so we're asking everyone to clear the values out at the beginning. You can leave the tracks and then just change the type and possibly put.
And this calendar significantly affects the report card. So it affects the total number of days that it's displayed on the report card. So it's got to be updated.
Yeah. And Bonnie, you may not have done that before in the past, and that's okay. What we're doing is we're just trying to get everybody kind of on the same page now to make sure that it won't matter what district you're in or what school you're in. We've got everyone following the same procedures. That way we know we've got some built-in consistency. Is that okay? Okay, I'm not going to submit to commit this, folks, as I'm just doing this as a demonstration. Okay, so let's talk about the roles that happen when for attendance for individual students. So this would be the phone call that comes in the morning. This would be the parent that comes in to pick up a child. This would be guidance meeting with a child. This could be services coming into the building, like social services or whatever. Maybe they're taking a child out somewhere. Medical appointments, doctor's appointments. This would be suspensions. So what you do is you go and go find your kid. Oh, let's see. I think I'll take Megan. So you go and select the child from the start page, and then you go to their attendance, and you can see I've already put some data in from the day before. So for an individual day, click on that day of the week, whatever it may be, selecting the code that is appropriate for the phone call. I'm going to mention this again, but I'm going to mention this now too. If this happens to be a half day of school because the kids are going home at lunchtime, say it's parent-teacher interviews in the afternoon, when you put the code in, you make sure you put in the half-day code only. So if the parent calls and the child is sick, and you know it's a half day, then you would put it in for illness AM only. That way the child will not have if you put it for a full day illness on a half day, the child's actually going to have a half day more absence than they really did. So half days get half day codes. And that's something that we're going to be bringing up with the teachers as well too. But in the office, we want to make sure that everybody's following the same procedures for that as well. So Megan is out. So you put in a comment of whatever is appropriate for that comment, and please put your initials after it. There are a lot of schools that have multiple AAs, or this could be your administration. They put comments in here too. Some guidance counselors have access to this as well, and we'd like to know who is the one who actually entered it, and then you submit. Any questions?
Yeah. Are you saying the teachers can put in these comments for admin?
The teachers cannot put the comments in, no. The comments can only be, oh wait, sorry. My apologies. Yes, they can. But the classroom teacher may not know these examples of when phone calls and things are coming in. But teachers can put comments in their Power Teacher, which the office can now see too. Now, Debbie, because I can see it's you that typed the message in there, the There are certain configurations in certain schools. You know, some schools don't like teachers to have access to some of the code, so they've actually limited them. And it has to do around, you know, do you have an AA in your building all day? Things like that. Is it a teaching administrator? You know, like, so there are some variations because of that, where there's somebody in the office other times versus there's not somebody in the office all the time. So some schools have access to different codes than others, just so you're aware. Anything else there, Lindsay? Are we good so far?
We're good so far.
Awesome. All right, so the big one that we'd like to talk about is the supply teachers. So when there's a supply teacher in your building, this is the procedure for most schools. There's a piece of paper that the teacher leaves for the supply teacher to take attendance, and then the piece of paper is sent down to the office. I did some interviews with some AAs around the province, and I found out we had a little bit of inconsistency with this. It's important that when you get a piece of paper from the supply teacher and all the students are present, you still have to go in and actually submit the attendance for that teacher. So you go in through the teacher schedule, and you pick the teacher in question. Let's say it's Leo. Leo's out. And we take attendance in homeroom. Clicking on the chair. If these students are all present today, we still have to open it up and submit it. And I'll show you why. Under the teacher submission status, you can see now that Leo has had his attendance submitted for homeroom. And if you just submit the attendance for maybe one individual in Leo's homeroom, starting on the start page for that one child, then it doesn't look like the attendance was actually submitted for that child. Remember, everybody is default present, which is okay, but we also want to know that it was actually submitted for all the other children as well too. So we're asking to make sure that you go in through teacher schedules and actually submit it. I'd like to stop and just let you take a look at this screen right here. In a K-8 school where you're using daily attendance tracking, which means in the homeroom, really the only one you're interested in knowing whether attendance has been taken or not is actually in the homeroom. So these other two classes, Math and You and Your World, have not been configured correctly for our teacher submission status to work properly. So let me show you how to make sure that you get that right. So when you're creating new sections, this is the box we'd like you to click off. So we'll go back to Leo's schedule, and we'll take a look at the Math. So if you actually go into that section of Math, and we scroll down to the following box, it's this one right here, exclude from attendance. If we click this off here, Leo would still be able to take attendance for that math class in Power Teacher, but once we submit here, so he still has access to see it, but when we run the teacher submission status report now, you'll notice that the Math is now off the list. So when you're creating your new sections, click off for all subjects except for homeroom, click off that box that you don't want it counted. If we have any AAs here that are in a school, like a middle school that does meeting attendance like high school, you would do it the other way around. You would say homeroom, do not count it on this screen, but I do want it to count it for all the other subjects. This way, when you run this report, right now I have no way of knowing how Leo's done until I actually click on it. If I click on my name right here, you can see homeroom has not been submitted. If I submit it for me now, you'll see I'm green. And therefore, when you need to do your safe arrival, you can run this report and you can check to see which teachers have not completed it.
Alistair, we have a question from West.
Yep.
Are teachers supposed to take period attendance in Power School? So I believe Lisa's at a 6 to 8 school.
Okay, so Lisa, that depends on the school in particular. We have some schools, most of them in South, just so you know, in the 6 to 8 world, they've actually requested that they actually take period attendance because that's how their report card is actually configured. In the vast majority of our schools, the K-8s, they take it only in homeroom. There are a lot of teachers, like before I did this job, I was a music teacher. And I like to actually take attendance of the students that were in my class because I didn't see them every day. So, you know, sometimes there would be 2 or 3 days in between before I would see them again just because of the schedule. I can still take attendance for my music class in Power Teacher with it turned off here, and then I have access to my own records of whether a kid is there or not.
So she's saying that they take attendance, but not in Power Teacher.
All teachers take attendance for homeroom. I'm not sure if I understand your question, Lisa. I'm sorry.
So I guess maybe it's an administration, like it's not mandatory that you take attendance in Power Teacher for that school, but it would be for homeroom that you take it in Power Teacher.
That's right. It's not mandatory. Well, I can't speak for every school, but to my knowledge, most schools do not make it mandatory that they take attendance for every period, even though they may be a daily attendance school, which means they have to take it in homeroom.
So I'm thinking, Lisa, your school's fine if that's the way that you've been working and your administration hasn't said anything otherwise. They have the option to take period attendance if they want, or they can manually be doing it the way that they've been doing it, but they do have to do it in homeroom. So you guys are probably fine. Mm-hmm. And same for you, Nancy.
Mm-hmm. All right, is everybody all right?
Oh, sorry, I think I skipped a question too. Just a second, let me go back up here.
No problem.
Letitia, can I get a copy of this in writing? Letitia, just so everybody knows, Alistair is recording this session. We're not exactly sure where we're going to put the session afterwards, but we will make sure we get the, I think you're talking about a YouTube video, Alistair?
Yes, I have to set up the site. And I was talking to Scott Steves, who is here with us, and he's going to give me a hand with that. Right, Scott? Pretty please?
So we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of where this is going to be posted.
Yeah, and in the meeting invite for this session, folks, I posted 3 documents for you. One of them is everything that we're talking about here written in one document, and then I gave you the data standard, and there's also a chronological testing, a chronological sheet that I made for you too, just to remind you on when things need to be done throughout the year. So there's 3 documents there to help you to remind you of things if you forget. Okay, so yeah, so that's good. So those are the regular things that we just wanted to touch base on again, just to make sure that everybody's still getting the same message. So just quickly review that. So we've got the calendar set up. Make sure that you touch it at the beginning of the end of the month. Make sure that you do it at least 24 hours before the report cards are printed. And within the office, if you're dealing with individuals, you search for the individual and you can change it on their attendance page. Also including a comment of some kind with your initials after it. And for supply teachers, we want you to make sure that you actually go into every teacher's schedule and submit it, even if students are all present.
Alistair, could you just do that one step because we had a user that missed that?
Sure. For the supply teacher?
For the teacher, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm in my ECD K-12. My job is to do the attendance because I'm the AA. The piece of paper comes in. We come in here and we grab, let's see, I think this one here has a homeroom. Yeah. So this teacher right here has a homeroom. So I come in here. I have to click on the chair. And even though every child is present today, I still need to submit it. So that when it's submitted and I run the period teacher submission status report, you can now see that I've actually submitted it for that homeroom. We also talked about making sure that your sections you make sure that your sections are turned off. So that way, when you use the submission status page, it'll turn green. Like you can see mine right here, it's green right away because the only thing that I've asked the system to track is the homeroom. You can have your entire school configured at once for this. So like in this one right here, you could send a help desk request into your SIS specialist in your district and give them the instructions on what you would like. You want the homeroom to count only for the teacher submission status, and they will turn off all the subjects en masse for you. And if there's any clarification needed, they'll reach out to you to make sure that it's done correctly. Okay, so the next thing I want to get into is the new things that we're going to be asking people to do. So I've already alluded to the first one. This is for half days. So on half days, we're asking teachers and people that use Power School, so our AAs and our administrators, that they use the AM codes only if school's closed in the afternoon. Some cases you don't know, right? So for example, you start out the day and then the big storm comes in really quickly and they have to cancel. So any values that were entered in there as being absent for the morning, or for the day, you have to run the period attendance by class report for that day. So let's pretend it's now 10:30. The announcement has come in that school is going to be closed. Attendance has been submitted. We grab all the students in the building, and under system reports, MB reports, we run the period attendance by class report. You'll notice it's for all the students. We want to run it for all the teachers. And now this next part depends on your building. If you do daily attendance, that means homeroom, you're going to click it off on the here. If it's for your meeting school, I would just not click any of them because that would be all of them rather than have to sit there and click them all. And then run it for today, including any comments. This will give you a list of the students that are absent on that date. You can see there's no data for this one. The students that show up on this list have to be changed from full day attendance into half day attendance. Classroom teachers can do it too. So if part of the procedure is that school's now going to be closed at lunchtime, a message has to go to your teachers, please go open up your Power Teacher and change the full day attendance absences into half day attendance absence. That way we're accurately capturing the percentage of students that are absent within our building over a period of time. In a school that has a meeting attendance, that means they take attendance for each period. If school gets closed halfway through the day, then the office will blast attendance not required to all students for the afternoon. Because when the building's closed, we can't very well say a student's going to be dinged for being absent when the building wasn't even open. So this is what we do. What we do is we go and we grab all the students again. We are going to go down here to the change attendance. And if it is, so again, we're talking about meeting attendance. We're talking about the periods in the afternoon. Be very careful you choose the correct date. It will be the day you're working on because you got a call in the morning. And what we're going to do is we're going to scan for any codes that are in there, and we're going to change them to attendance not required. Now, we highly recommend that you reach out to your SIS specialist to talk this through just to make sure that you've got it right. Because once data has been overwritten, we can't go back and then revert it to what it was before. But this will now accurately capture. Scott, we would not use the PM code in this example because we're looking at schools that are using meeting attendance. Meeting attendance. All the other kids for daily attendance, we only need to change the ones that were absent because for the other kids they're already present and therefore they're not losing a day of absence. Yeah, no worries. Believe me, I have to say that I've got it written right down here on the paper beside me to make sure I get that clear. So Are there any questions about this, folks? This is a new procedure we're asking, and at any time, if you feel like you've got some doubt on what you're doing, reach out to your SIS specialist to make, and then walk it through with someone. Lindsay and I always joke. We say it out loud. Talk to yourself. Okay, the date is this, and I'm clicking off these periods. Somebody walks into the building, hold your hand up and say, "Hold on, I got to get this right," and just think it through before you submit it. Any questions, folks, on that?
For daily attendance, we would use a PM code, correct?
For daily attendance, well, for the daily attendance, we would run their period attendance by class report and look for the individual students, because we wouldn't be blasting it for the entire school, because the kids that are there in the morning would be marked as present. They're not counting any absences. So the fact that they go home halfway through the day is not going to change anything on their report card. It would only be the kids that are actually marked as present for the whole day, and now the day is not even a whole day anymore. Okay. Like I said, reach out to your SIS and we will walk you through it to make sure that you've got it right. Okay, so the next one is partial day programming. So this is a student that has an IBSP, which is a behavior plan, and they're now saying that they can only come to school in the morning. So let me take this child right here. We'll use this child here as an example. Oh, there's my list. I'll use Hawks. Megan. So let's say Megan's on a behavior plan. We can change, this is where the attendance not required comes in, and we're recommending that if we know that Megan's schedule is changing, that you do it at least only by a week at a time. You can do it daily if you wish, but you can actually set it up by going into meeting, choosing the week that change starts. So let's say it's this week here in October. We can set it to attendance not required. So let's say she is allowed to come in the morning only. So we would say attendance is not required in the afternoon. So this is a school that has daily attendance, which means it's taken for the more in homeroom. So we would actually just click right within the box to say that attendance is not required in the afternoon. If the child was sick on that day and she was only supposed to be there in the morning, then we would say illness AM only, because she's not required to be in the afternoon, so we don't have to worry about dinging her for time that she's not supposed to be there. So let's say she is only here for partial days. So this right here means she doesn't have to be in school in the afternoon. Putting in an attendance code and putting your initials in there. Now, just to save yourself time, I always copy it before I save it, and then I can paste it right into the next one without having to type it all over again, because we can't blast it to everything all at once. We recommend that you don't do this any more than a week at a time, because if there's an ESS meeting and Megan's comes up, and Megan's been showing some great improvement with the items that are in her plan, you need to come back in here and change it. If you blast it, say for an entire month, and it changes after the first week, then EECD has to come in and change all the dates for you, and it's quite a process. You have to do it as a help desk request. I wouldn't do it any more than 1 week at a time or daily. Any questions on that, folks? We've already talked about the half day for the weather. When there are times when parents call in advance and say, my child's going to have a dentist appointment on Thursday. They call you on Tuesday. Oh, while I have you on the phone, Sally's going to be out. What we're asking you to do when you come back from when school is open again. So let's use this week as an example. Lindsay calls into school and she tells me that Sally, her daughter Sally, is going to be out, and I go in and I enter it in on Thursday, and then all of a sudden, there's a snowstorm on Thursday. We have an attendance data in the background which will show up on the report card even if the calendar's turned off. So when I come back into school on Friday, I have to come in and I have to adjust the calendar. But before I adjust the calendar, I need to remove that absent code that's been entered in for Lindsay's daughter Sally, because if I don't clear it out on the report card, she's going to have a day absent when school wasn't even open. So we select all the students, system reports, MB reports, and run that period attendance class report for all the students, for all teachers. You can leave that entirely blank, and then select the date for when the school was closed. If it was a 2-day storm, because we do have those, just have both days here, show the comments, and then run the report. With those listed, you'll have the students that had future attendance values entered in because somebody had called in. This would be quite common for a suspension. So, suspension data could have been put in on Monday, pardon me, because the child would have been out for 5 days. There was a snowstorm on those 5 days. We need to take that. We can't really say a kid was suspended when the school wasn't even open. So we come in here and then we adjust each. So if there were 4 children on this list, we would print that list off, come back to this start page, and just find those children one at a time and go and change that storm date data back to present because school wasn't on. And then you come back in here to the calendar and clear it all out. Any questions, folks?
I think you're doing a good job, Alistair. There's no questions.
All right, they're either totally on board or totally baffled. I hope it's the first one. We've got next. We've got the last one I'd like to take a look at is school activities. If a student is going out of if students are going out of the building for a particular club or group or team, then you need to adjust them accordingly. So, like for example, like I said, I was a music teacher. I took my kids on a trip, and we would go to the music festival, say in Moncton. Those kids would be entered in for those 2 days as a school activity. So that doesn't count on the report card, but we also know that they weren't in the building. So it's really a sanctioned absence from the classroom. That's it, I think. Lindsay, can you think of anything else?
No, I'm looking at the agenda, and I think you've got everything covered.
All right. Would anyone like me to go over something again, maybe some of the new ones, just to make sure that it's either clear for you or you have some questions? It's in the documents that have been created for you, which is in this link invite. Your data and accountability have them. Your PED people have them. Your administrators have them as well too. We gave them to them. There's also a document at the district office as well, so they're aware of all the changes that we're asking people to put into place. And we're looking for some really great attendance data for this year, so we can have some good numbers. Any questions?
Just repeat the last part about the school activity.
Okay, sure. The school activity, code SA, we're asking to use that when the child is not in the classroom. So for the example could be the drama club, like my band. When I took them to the music festival, they were out of the school with me for 2 or 3 days. So I would give a list to the office. The office would go in and find those students and put them out as SA for the 2 days, which means they know they're not in the building, but they are sanctioned to be on whatever that activity would be. And that would be the same for like sports team. So if the kids are going on a volleyball tournament somewhere and they're out of the building for a full day, then they would be listed as a school sports team.
And Alistair, maybe go over if there was like the Calathumpians there or something in the school.
All right. So this would be, I would say, more for middle schools that take meeting attendance. So if your middle school takes attendance for, period by period, and the kids are going to be out of class all afternoon because they've gone down to see a presentation, then the office can blast school activity to every kid in for the day. The only thing is, what you want to do is when you're I better show you this. So let's say we're in a middle school that takes period attendance. You go grab all the kids. We're looking at changing their attendance, and we're looking at the day in question, and maybe it's something that's going on in the afternoon. This portion right here is, we don't want to scan for all codes anymore. We want to scan only for the present codes, because if a child was out for bereavement on that day, they wouldn't have been there for the school activity either. So we want to make sure that we're only going to be putting in for the present codes, and then we are going to be blasting to all the kids for school activity, and not school activity AM or PM, because we're actually doing this period by period. And then we would overwrite it, and maybe it's a presentation by Matt, because that does happen in middle schools. Does that help, Lindsay? Is that
I think that's great.
Clear? Yep. And again, we say to everybody, if you're not sure about something, please reach out to someone. You don't need an answer sometimes right at that 15 minutes. Sometimes you can just back off a second and just say, wait a second, I'm not really sure if I got this right. Call somebody. We will give you a hand. Absolutely promise. Okay.
I think it was a great turnout.
A great turnout. Our biggest one yet. Door prizes for everybody on the way out. Any other questions, folks?
Nancy has a great question. Mm-hmm. Should this be done for 9 to 12 students as well if they were absent for a presentation?
You mean in terms of when you're blasting it to all the kids? As long as you just select present, scan for present, it will leave the absences already entered in there.
Because the code that for school activity is an actual present code, so the students aren't going to be marked absent. So, but if they're actually not in the school, then they're getting their absence code.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, school activity is a sanctioned event where it explains where children are, but it does not impact on their attendance on the report card. So these would be good for our internal numbers to know that, kids didn't go to math class period 5 on Tuesday because there was a presentation. And that way they wouldn't be marked as default present either, because the teachers are usually in the gymnasium with the kids and attendance wouldn't be taken. So we need attendance taken for the kids. Scott, is there anything that you'd like to add in there? Scott, he's one of our, and Derek, I think you're here too. Derek and Scott are our pedagogy specialists in East and North, respectively. Is there anything, gentlemen, that you'd like to add in there from experiences that you've had with dealing with teachers about Power Teacher and attendance? Thank you, Scott. extra Christmas gift for you, sir. Thanks, Derek. Okay, I'll stick around here with Lindsay, and we'll hang out. And if anybody has any questions, please pipe in, and we'll answer your questions one-on-one. I see in the window here now that I'm looking at it for the comments, people have said they're going to watch the video again. There's also the documents, and so as soon as I've got figured out where I'm going to be putting all my my sessions, I will be uploading them all. And then because some people ask different questions in different sessions, so you can always speed to the end and see what kind of questions are. I wish everybody in the room, Lindsay, thank you so much.
And thank you, Shonda Cormier. She pinged a couple of users that were having some difficulty, so I appreciate that, Shonda.
Thank you, Shonda. Much appreciated. I wish you all a successful school year, and good luck with everything. I know how busy it is in buildings, and it's even taking this time has been a sacrifice for the things you need to do in your building as well too. So it is very much appreciated. Okay, I can see this one. If a child is showing not in a class in a teacher's homeroom, and then we pull up the attendance, and they've got an extra student, how do I get rid of them? So we're talking about Lolita, we're talking about a student that's in that class but shouldn't be in that class. Is that correct? Right. So you would take that, you would select that individual student from the start page, and once you've got the child selected on the left-hand side, here, I'll show you if you can see the screen here. So I'll go back to my Megan Hawks again that I just had a second ago. Just so everybody knows, these are fictitious kids, just so you know. So we've got Megan selected. She's in the wrong class. You're going to be going down to modify her schedule, and you'll see that here are the classes that she's enrolled in. In this case, she could be in the completely wrong class altogether, and you would drop them from these classes. Now, to be very clear, make sure that you select the correct drop dates. So, you know, if you're going to be dropping them from, maybe these are the right classes but the wrong homeroom, you can select this one right here and then drop them from that class. You'll get a warning about the date when you're going to actually be submitting it. If this is a change because it was just a mistake before startup, but you're already a week into school, you might have some attendance data in there which might have to be adjusted. Or if you're just satisfied with moving this kid from this homeroom to the next homeroom, you can use that date. The child will show up in that class after you've dropped them and selected them into the new one. If I've understood your question correctly, have I covered it? How I got to that last screen? Okay, I'll do that again for you. So think of the child in mind, type the child's name in, it'll show up on the list, click on the child's name, and that will open up the screen on the left hand side here that has everything to do with that child in particular. If you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a section called scheduling, and then at the in there you're looking at modifying the schedule. And then you select the classes that you wish to drop the child from. Again, be very careful of the dates that you're using. You'll be prompted for the date on the next page. So once the child has been dropped from all these classes, then, so let's say I've dropped everything for Megan, just as an example. Then from the start page again, you'll see Megan is still selected. You'll go in here, over here to this one here, and you will go and enroll. Well, there's two ways you can do it. This is the way I like doing it anyway. There's more than one way to bake a beautiful lasagna. You can click on Mass Enroll and go look for the teacher, the new teacher that you would like to have the child enrolled in. And so maybe you want to put them in My Homeroom, and you can search, and you'll see my class list down here, and there's My Homeroom. As soon as you click on the homeroom, this will come up, and you want to make sure the date is correct. If this was a mistake from before when school started up, you want to back it all the way up to July. But if this is a change that was decided and needed, then you go with the date of today. Lita, does that help?
Awesome, she says.
Woohoo! Anybody else? Thanks, Susan. Have a great school year. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.